All right, everybody, welcome into a spring version of the Monday Smash presented by State Farm agent Russ Forhis. He's Ira Schofel. My name is Tom Lang, and the engine is revving up. Slowly, we're getting into this acclimation period for all, right, Ira? How's it going tonight on a Monday for you, sir?
It's going good, man. How you doing? Did you have a good weekend?
I did have a good weekend. I popped down to Orlando, watched Daniel Berger play some good golf. I wasn't there on Sunday to see him, unfortunately, come home with the silver medal at the Arnold Palmer Invitational. But yes, I watched Florida State basketball from afar, and that was quite the ass kicking. I know it got a little tight, but what they're doing right now on the court is very interesting to see, and they got a whole lot of momentum as they're the 8th seed now in the ACC tournament this week.
Yeah, man, it's going to be a lot of fun. And Matt Lasser, who works with us, our guy Matt, is going to be going up there to Charlotte to cover the ACC tournament, which should be a lot of fun. I mean, there was a time where we didn't know if FSU's men were going to make the ACC tournament. We certainly weren't sure we were going to go cover it. But, man, they have been is one of the best teams. They've literally been one of the best teams in college basketball, not just the ACC over the last month or so. I mean, look at the way they played, not just winning all these games, 9 out of 12 or whatever it is, but also just, some of these games are just dominating people, and they've let people come back into the games. But when you're getting 20-point leads on the regular, that says a lot. And I'm excited to see what they do, man. Cal's will be a good game on Wednesday, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if they win that game. And I don't think they're going to get blown out if they play Duke. I mean, I think this is just a good basketball team that really believes. And when you have a team that's got some ability and you really believe, you can do some cool things.
That's the thing. What basketball is doing right now is what I think we all hope football will do this year, which is pleasantly surprise you and leave you satisfied, even though you know that there's room for improvement. There's likability. You win some games that you don't expect to win. You don't need to start the equivalent of 0-5 in the ACC this football season. You don't have to do that necessarily, but you want to feel like you said it today on the Jeff Cameron show. I wish they played for longer. I wish there were some more weeks, some more time to watch this basketball team play. That's what I think what we're hoping for the football team. We'll get to football in just a second here, but I did want to ask, courtside with Coach J. Ride has been a great feature this year. Are you guys thinking about doing that before the ACC tournament and Wednesday's game? Are you thinking about maybe doing a post-fact if there's one magical week in Charlotte, courtside with Coach J. Ride? What's the plan for that this week?
That's a good question. Jacob Ridenauer, who is the star of the show, former FSU basketball coach. For people that haven't watched it, he's former FSU basketball assistant coach and longtime college basketball analyst and college coach. And now he's an analyst on ESPN's network of channels covering a lot of college basketball, including Florida State. And we've been doing a show weekly for probably the last 6-8 weeks. And he's going to be up in Charlotte. So I'm going to see if maybe we can do something pregame, even if it's not a full show, maybe we can do something if he can get set up there. And certainly if they win games, I mean, Matt will be there too. So Matt can get him. Maybe we can do some things with him and Matt up there in Charlotte.
Just amazing that, they're in this tournament, but then you're like, wish they had a better draw in terms of the quad, the way that shook out with NC State losing over the weekend. You could get matched up perhaps in a pod with Virginia, but you beat Cal, a team that's on the bubble. If you do that, beat them again, and then you face Duke on Thursday night, I think a whole lot of people are going to be nervous because you start to get this little tinge of expectation. You just said it to start the show. You wouldn't be stunned if Florida State was able to compete with Duke because essentially they've been in every single game, and you can argue they should have won just about every single game out of the last dozen.
Yeah, and I would bet, man, and I don't watch all these other teams, religiously like we do Florida State. But I've seen enough of them. I've seen Miami play. I've seen Clemson play. I've seen Virginia play. I've seen Carolina play. I don't know that I've seen any team other than maybe Duke that has the conviction that this Florida State team does. Like whatever Luke is telling them, man, they believe it 100%. And for him to not lose them when they were getting blown out 2 months ago was really impressive. And there were a couple of times he made a couple of comments kind of calling guys out. And I was like, dude, I don't know if that's a good call. These are not pros. And your first time as a head coach, you don't have a lot of skins on the wall. And I was nervous for Luke because I like Luke and I think he's a sharp guy. And I didn't know if that was inexperience. But, man, they came through that, and then they've just gotten better and better and better. And you just watch them play, the conviction they play with and everything they do, they buy in. Like if you watch them, you can watch some of the things they do defensively where they'll, switch defenses. When they were playing Miami here, they started doubling the post, which is something that they really hadn't done much before, but they put it in for that game and they executed it really well. It's like whatever the coaches put in, it's not just Luke. I think he's got a good staff and he'll tell you that, but whatever they put in, those guys really believe it, and then they can execute it because they're older guys. So they've been around a lot. They're smart, and man, they just believe. And so if you have that, I think that prevents you from just getting destroyed, because you're not just going to fall apart. Now we'll see. We'll see maybe Thursday if they get to play Duke, maybe it goes poorly. But I think they'll be competitive, man. I think of any team in the tournament field, they'll believe in their chances of beating Duke more than any other team, just because that's kind of how they've been.
Totally. I couldn't agree more about that. There is a ton of belief there. And you noted something earlier today when you were talking about there just isn't panic. Even when some of these leads that are huge are starting to go away, it's not like you see panic and sped up behavior in the half court or demonstrative language defensively or after a whistle that it gets toxic. They lock the hell in. They go make the next play. Yeah, you don't want to look ahead past the game against Cal on Wednesday, but if Florida State was to get to Thursday, that kitchen sink approach, I think, is 100% of what you're going to see, because against Miami, when they ran all those different, half court, man, zone, the trapping, what you're talking about, Miami still had the decided size advantage near the rim. So if the shot got near the rim, they were going to win the possession. But Florida State generated a ton of turnovers that night, and that's how they kept themselves in that game. So I would imagine that would be the game plan if they can get by a team in Cal that is also on the bubble. Florida State's played a lot of teams that have been desperate and needed a big win. Virginia Tech when they hit the road to play them, Clemson, SMU this past weekend. Cal will be no different. So you're going to get the best shot from the 9 seed in the ACC tournament.
Yeah, the Clemson one stands out to me because, Virginia Tech too, because both of those were on the road. Clemson to me, that is a program that, Brad Brownell's built something really sustainable there. They've been really good now for several years. One of probably the 3 best teams in the conference over the last several years. And so you've got that conviction of their belief when they were on a losing streak and they needed that Florida State game to kind of be a get right game. And instead Florida State went into their arena and beat them. And again, it's really impressive. When you look at the ACC tournament, it's different to a degree. It is a big stage. For people, I think I might have talked about it last week. Just if you get it, or it might have been, I was on courtside with Coach J-Rod, that if you live anywhere near Charlotte or Atlanta, or you're within driving distance and you have a chance to go to the ACC tournament, go do it. And especially this year, because this is a fun team, but in general, it's a really cool event. To me, it's one of my favorite things I ever get to cover. And, Matt's going to have a great time there. And, you do sometimes that makes players play differently because it is a big environment. It's a big stage. You look over on press row and all the announcers that you see on TV are there. And, it's a cool vibe. So you wonder how they'll handle that. But man, again, all the signs have been so promising so far.
And between now and then, that game on Wednesday night, Florida State baseball takes to the Diamond down in Gainesville. That's a big game, as Florida lost 2 or 3 to High Point over the weekend. They should be a pretty angry bunch. Florida State's been winning ball games lately, looking more like that they've slotted some things and they're figuring things out in the batting order and on the mound as well. That's going to be an interesting game tomorrow. And then, of course, there's football, that other sport that Florida State plays, and you're going to have a practice and immediate availability on Wednesday, and then they get into full pads on Friday before they break. So acclimation is going to be done. They'll get into spring break. They'll come back at full contact. I think the question, Ira, I was bringing it up earlier, is how does football get to a place where there's that energy in your voice, in my voice, when you're talking about football, the way that there is for basketball? It's just, I know that the mandate was different for Luke Laux this year. This was a year of consolidation, setting a foundation, and then you hope to excel. It's different for football, where it's more zero-summish every year. But how do we get there? And how do they build to that place? That's what we're going to be documenting. That's what you have been documenting since the luncheon last Friday, the availability today. What are some things maybe that you've learned so far, that whether you shared it on the wrap or maybe something that you think, oh, I forgot to mention that. What has stood out to you over these first couple of availabilities for football?
Yeah, I think when you look back to last season, and again, we had it for a few weeks. We had a few good weeks there in late August to September of 2025. That was a nice little run. But yeah, the thing is, you don't know until you get into games where things are going poorly. And so that's where this basketball team has impressed us, is because you can't get any lower than getting blown out at home by 44 by NC State. So when you go through that and you come out the other side and you stick together, and like you said, when you watch this basketball team, you don't see the toxicity. What you do see is guys getting on each other. Like, you see that all the time. And it's not just earlier this year, it was Martin Somerville. He's got that personality. But now you see other dudes doing it. There was a play in the game this past Saturday. I don't know if it was on TV, but we could see it at the court, where I think Thomas Basong, got mad at, he was getting upset at an official, or he didn't like a call. And so one of the other dudes just grabbed him and is like, no, that's not what we're doing. We have to talk. Like, gather yourself and let's go talk about what we have to do next. And so that team just has that, that personality. And so you ask yourself, okay, is that coaching, or is that the right group of players? I mean, I think it's always a combination of both. And again, we mentioned a little bit today on the wrap, and I might have talked about it on Jeff's show as well, but like, you'll never know what a team is made out of in terms of how they're going to stick together in those tough times, really, until you get there. But you do like what you're hearing right now. And again, I know a lot of fans are going to roll their eyes because they don't care about any of that, like the soft topics, the intangibles. But man, everything I'm hearing about these guys and the attitudes, and, again, going back to Tony White, like, watch his interview where he talks about how they brought in football players. Like, these are football guys, and how he talks about these guys appreciate playing for Mike Norvell, and they appreciate the opportunity to wear Florida State's uniform. And you could say, okay, that's just words, but I'm hearing it from other people too. Like, I'm hearing those positive messages around this team. And so it makes you feel good. Now, whether or not it's going to sustain if they go up and if they lose a heartbreaker at SMU, that's the question. But you really can't know until you get to that point. But at least as of now, those are promising things. So, again, that to me, there's not a lot you can, if you're a Florida State fan, there's not a lot you can hang on to. You don't love what they did in the transfer portal at quarterback. I mean, Ashton Daniels, we'll see what it looks like, but nobody's like, oh, this guy's definitely the answer. I don't think anybody could look at what he's done in his career and say, that's where my hope is. I don't think a lot of people right now have much hope at all in Mike Norvell and that he's going to be the answer, or maybe even in Tony White after some of the struggles last season. So your hope is that maybe these guys, they found the right guys, the right combination of guys that will respond to these coaches and then play to the way you're talking about. But there's just no way to know that until we get into the season.
Yeah, so all you can do is document how they sound and how they look for the time being. I've got some thoughts on that just because I'm watching from Warchant TV's perspective. You guys were in the room for that for luncheon on Friday, and then obviously today. I want to get it. Is the feeling in the room the same thing as it looks on video? But before we do that, State Farm agent Russ Voris, everybody. He supports Florida State athletics. He supports Warchant.com and our multimedia adventures and ventures, as he's done for decades now. And you can be a customer of State Farm agent Russ Voris. Whether you need an auto policy like I've bundled it together with the penthouse policy that I have here, where they're able to get into some riders and clauses and language for the big company that I have here downtown. Things need to be very specifically worded. They're outstanding at getting into the weeds. They're outstanding at handling the big things like home or auto. State Farm agent Russ Voris, a diehard Nole. If you like to support Nole-owned businesses, or you like to support Noles who can help you and also help us at Warchant, State Farm agent Russ Voris is the guy, Ira.
Yeah, and he's been doing it for a long time. Not a long time. I'm not trying to age you, Russ, but he's been doing it for a long time, and he's had a very successful business over in there in Jacksonville, very well known in the Jacksonville community. They've got the 2 offices over there, but they do service Florida, Georgia, and Alabama, all your insurance needs, backed by State Farm, and just, a guy that really cares about customer service, not just selling you the policy, but then providing service after the fact, and especially if you need them. And we all know when you need help from your insurance agent, you want somebody who's going to be responsive and give you the accurate, up-to-date information you need. And Russ is a really good guy, and he's a huge Nole. And if you do reach out to him, please mention that you heard about him on the Monday Smash and Warchant.com, because he's a huge Nole and he likes helping other Noles.
A lot of times we will talk to you about businesses that might be local-ish on the Warchant Multimedia Network. If you live in Florida, Georgia, Alabama, you're covered by Russ Voris. If you want to be, visit the website. It's his name, russvoris.com, RUSSVORHIS.com. Mike Norvell sounds a little bit, here's the blend that I'm hearing from him on Friday and today. Relieved and charged up. There seems to be a sense of relief because when he's asked questions now, I noticed this today more than Friday, specific questions about the offense and how it functioned. I think he's engaged again in a way because he gets to be a decision maker on the ground about personnel usage and the way things are going to stack together. I drew that out of how he spoke today about specifically, say, the offensive line. And he was talking about the position battles and how they've got a bunch of guys that are going to compete that were here before. And then obviously the transfers that have come in, some that are young, some that are veterans. Just the way he was talking about that position, it sounded to me like somebody who knows he can have a bigger hand in making the decision about who gets what reps and when. I don't know if you detect that in the room, but I'm sensing, at least for now, I know we'll see what happens in the fall. It's all building to that. But it would make sense that if you have your hands on the machine again, that you might feel a little bit, you get more feedback out of it. It seems like Mike Norvell is already feeling that after one day.
Yeah, I think it goes back to our concern that we kind of voiced at the time during the season last year, where it felt like there were times where he didn't know exactly what he should be doing during the games. And so we weren't at practices, so we couldn't speak to that. But, we were at practices from 2020. Well, I guess 2021 COVID, we were at practices through 2024. In all of those seasons, I mean, he was as hands-on as Jimbo Fisher was as a head coach. I mean, he ran the offense. He's, they have these, we haven't really, I don't know, we've talked about it in the past, but like they have these huge television screen monitors and you would watch him, you'd see him go the replay boards. And so after every play, you'd see Mike Norvell go, even if he wasn't running the offense for that drive or that series, he'd be watching the big TV screen for the replay. Then he would go over to individual players and coach them up. I mean, it was Mike Norvell's offense, right? I mean, you were out there too. There was no question that it was Mike Norvell's offense. Then all of a sudden in 1 year, you go to, no, it's Gus Malzahn's offense. And anybody that knows Gus Malzahn or has ever been around Gus Malzahn or watched his press conferences would understand that Mike Norvell wasn't getting a whole lot of input into what Gus, who was the guy that hired him 20 years ago, and the guy that's, played for a national championship and led offenses for all these years, Gus was not taking input from really anybody. I mean, it was going to be his offense for better or worse. And so that had to be excruciating at times for Mike Norvell. I think it was difficult for Gus to not be the overall final decision maker in some decisions that happened inside of a team. So I think that's why he wasn't all that thrilled with his role. And then Mike goes to a situation where he's now told he's going to be a CEO, but I don't know if he knew what to do there. So yeah, man, I think there's no doubt that he's excited. He even said, he's like, this is what I love to do. I think he stopped himself. He's like, this is one of the things I love to do. So yeah, man, I think it's going to give him a new lease on life and maybe his career. Whether it's successful, we'll have to see, but yeah, there's no doubt. I think he is definitely fired up, man. This is what he built himself as. This is how he built his career doing this.
Yep. And
he'll get one more chance to see if he can show he still got it.
Yeah, I think there were some phases there. It's almost like stages of grief. You're like, I can't believe I'm still here. I'm going to get this next shot at it. And I mean, the Monday press conferences look like in the fall, they got worse and worse and worse. You're like, oh, buddy, now we're just going through the motions. I think you're on the other side of that spectrum of all going through all those stages where he's engaged. The next guy I would say that I think is the most engaged just from watching all those interviews. And if you haven't yet, you can check him out on the channel from the coaches luncheon. All the assistant coaches spoke. Warchant staff recorded those videos. Corey Clark spoke with Tim Harris. Tim Harris looks to be as charged as he has been since he got here. He's thrilled with this opportunity. You can sense it. I don't think it's as simple as Gus is out of the room. Now he gets a chance to breathe. I don't know that it's about personality. I think it's just about opportunity. I mean, you could tell that there's a lot of responsibility on Tim Harris' plate. He's not going to be calling the plays. It would not appear. He did a couple of years ago at UCF. But it sounds like he has a ton of responsibility, and he's loving every minute of it. So at least in that sense, with Gus leaving in a really inopportune moment compared to when he could have, I think the guys that are replacing that workflow, Tim Harris and Mike Norvell, both seem pretty charged up. Coach Harris specifically when it comes to usage and some of the philosophies that the offense is going to run this year.
Yeah, and it was interesting to hear him talk about like the input he's going to have, and that some things he's done philosophically. He pointed out the fact that he was an offensive coordinator even without Gus Malzahn when he was at FIU under Butch Davis. He got to be OC for a year, so it's not like he's never done it before, and so he's going to have his own philosophies. The thing about Gus leaving is it's not like, I'm sure Tim Harris likes Gus Malzahn as an OC and believes in him as a play caller, but Gus coached everything. Gus was much more like Jimbo than even Norvell was, in the sense of, from what we heard from practice, Gus coached. He'd stop a play, coach the running back, coach the receivers, coach the quarterbacks, coach, like, the position coaches really were kind of assistants to Gus, all the position coaches. Well, Mike Norvell has never been that way. And so Tim Harris, even as the receivers coach last year and passing game coordinator, probably had times where Gus stepped on his toes and kind of took things over. And now, not only is Tim Harris getting a promotion to offensive coordinator, but he hasn't a head coach who at least is letting him believe that he's taking input. Now, when they're on Saturdays in the fall, does Mike Norvell just go back to doing what Mike Norvell wants to do? We'll see. But as for right now, definitely sounds like there's no way Tim Harris would say those things about the input he's getting and some of the things he's getting to put in and the ownership he's getting if it wasn't true. Like, he could answer that in a different way. So I think he really believes he's going to have some ownership in it and some real input. And that's huge. Just think about any of our normal lives. Like, if you, in your normal workplace, if you feel like nobody's listening to you, that's not fun. You're not getting to do your job or getting micromanaged. When you have some liberty and some responsibility and accountability, that's usually when people flourish. So it would make sense that Tim Harris will be excited.
Well, and also he was the receivers coach. He worked very hard to cultivate that room from the transfer portal or the high school ranks. And I mean, he basically said it. I would have used the personnel differently. We would have run some different routes, and we would have shuffled the personnel a little bit more to get more guys the ball. I have to think that he's speaking somewhat about Javen Boggs. I mean, that was one of the top recruits that Florida State imported from UCF over to Tallahassee. Then Boggs is playing should I stay, should I go after just 1 year on campus. I mean, I think what you're learning here in the aftermath after this change is that they're going to try to get more receivers the ball, and they're going to try to expand the route tree just a little bit. I mean, we've heard from our own Dominic Robinson, too, about in-breaking routes from Deuce Robinson. There weren't a ton of them last year, especially because the quarterback and the height issue that he had throwing over the middle, they stayed away from those things. It sounds like to me, beyond the fact that Mike Norvell has some differences in his offense than Gus does, especially in the pass game, it sounds like you're going to see some variety this year. Like, that's the thing I'm putting in the notes right away. We won't be able to see it until you get to week 0, week 1. But I'm expecting to see, when it comes to formations, when it comes to the routes, the route combinations, you're going to be seeing a lot more variety from Florida State this year.
Yeah, and and I talked to somebody else in the athletic department who's really connected, and they were saying that the intermediate passing game they expect to be just very different this year compared to what it was. And I think a lot of that was, Gus, he's taking those shots, or maybe he's running screens like there, and maybe part of that was because of Tommy. I haven't watched as much Gus Malzahn offense as you probably have, or some of the people watching this have, but it did feel like those were the two options that was on the table. I think you're right about Javen Boggs, but I also think a big one, and this is unfortunate because there's no fixing it. At least Javen Boggs can come back this year. Squirrel White, I just think the fact that he became a complete non-factor, it's unbelievable what that guy did at his first 3 years at Tennessee. 40 catches, 60 catches, and then comes to Florida State. And after the first game where he has the one diving catch, literally cut 4 passes for like 20 yards the rest of the season. It's crazy. And so, yeah, man, I think there's a lot of talent in that wide receiver core. I think there's talent, obviously at running back. I think there's talent. I like the talent on this offense. If Ashton Daniels can play at a pretty high level, doesn't have to be unbelievable, but play at a pretty high level, at a better than average ACC level, I think this offense can be pretty good. Now, those are some ifs. We'll have to see how it plays out.
Get to the defensive side of the ball in just a second after this word from State Farm agent Russ Forrest.
Contact Russ Forrest for an auto quote today.
here on the Monday Smash. Ira, you hit on something earlier today in regards to Tony White, speaking about the players that they have, the values that those players might have. I'm laying the subtext on a little heavy here. The values that they have of feeling the privilege, feeling the pride of what it is to be here and playing for Florida State. I sensed for that reason relief in his voice in watching the video interview on Friday. Would you agree that that's where he's coming from this year? It's not only that it's year 2 where things are going to be a little bit smoother, he doesn't have to teach from the ground up, but that he's happy with the citizens he has in the room a little bit more this year.
And that's one of those things that it's, again, like, I understand that people, will roll their eyes with some of this stuff because, it's not like Tony White was voicing displeasure with those guys last year. But, we have conversations throughout away from practice. We talk to people around the program. There's no secret. You think back to that defensive back room where Conrad Hussey gets kicked off the team during preseason camp and ends up having to transfer after an altercation with one of the assistant coaches. That's a bad sign. Edwin Joseph gets into an altercation. Another defensive back gets into an altercation with Mike Norvell during the Stanford game. He has now left. You look at Duty, fresh Shamar Arnaud.
Yep.
Shamar Arnaud had some off the field stuff when he was here. He's gone. Some things at that position. So when Patrick Surtain got let go, and I'm not saying that this is why he got let go, but there were a lot of issues in that defensive back room. And so now you have new guys, and the way Tony White talked about those defensive backs that they brought in, he was so fired up about, the Mekhi White, the kid from Duke. I think that's his last name. The CJ Richard, Carson, the DB Hobbs, the DB from Notre Dame. I mean, that whole group of transfer DBs, he went on and on about how they're Nehemiah Chandler, how they are football players. Like they're here to play football. And, just talking to people around the team, there was when the new coaching staff came in last year and like they would want to change things, you would just kind of get just not hemming and hawing, but just some resistance from some of the guys that were still on that defense from the year before. And so as a coach, man, the most frustrating thing in the world, just like as a parent, like you just want what's best for your kid. You just want what's best for your player. And if they're fighting you on stuff and they're not going along with it and buying in the stuff we're talking about with the basketball team, not only can you not accomplish as much as you wanted to do, but it affects the younger guys. So they are in a much better place right now in terms of that kind of stuff. And I've talked to people besides Tony White. I mean, we had that conversation the other day, but I talked to some other people around the program to kind of get more information. And they're like, yeah, man, like some of those guys that were here that are no longer here were a pain in the butt. And now you've got more guys that are happy to be here, want to be here. The question is, and this is what the most important part of this, though, is it's great to have guys who want to be here. It's great to have guys who are with the program and bought in and all that. Are they good enough? So you brought in some guys who are happy to be here, but you brought in guys from, some smaller schools. So of course they're going to be happy to be here. You let go some guys who are 4-star big-time recruits that played at big-time programs in high school, that played early at Florida State. So that's going to be the interesting part. Luke has done it with basketball. He's got a lot of guys that didn't have great pedigrees, but they are bought in. They play together. They play hard. They're winning. Can you do the same thing in football? Because I do wonder about the talent level. I like what we're hearing about the attitudes, but we don't know if the talent level is where it needs to be.
And you won't face the true adversity now. It's going to be months from now, and everything could be fine until something really goes wrong. And then how do you hold up? What's the morale like? One of the guys that I've heard, Ashlyn Barker, has been engaged, which is important because that whole live streaming thing that happened about a.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because I want to talk to Ashlyn about that whenever we get to talk to him. But I wonder if the conversation that if I'm Mike Norvell or if I'm Evan Cooper, the safeties coach, or Tony White, the conversation I'm having with Ashlyn Barker when they end up getting him to stay is, yeah, man, that's fine. It's understandable that you're mad about kids not caring enough. And it's perfectly understandable if you're mad about the state of the program right now. Well, do something about it. You've been here for 3 or 4 years now. Like, you have to be part of the solution. And it sounds like he's doing that. I wonder if that was part of the discussion. Like, listen, man, it's fine for you to be pissed off, but don't go to live stream about it. Make something happen. Go in the locker room and kick somebody's butt and make sure that they get in line. And I wonder if that's what led to this.
And they've got pieces. You're right. Yeah, you've got. I mean, he's one of those returners in Rawls because for a moment there, it looked like neither of those players would be back. Earl Little is gone, but Earl Little was a nice enough player, but I don't think it was worth breaking the bank to bring him back. So Mekhi Jones is who they're going to lean on big time. Nehemiah Chandler, some of the younger guys. There's a lot of potential here. This is the position group I think specifically where it just gets tough. That you're not able to see it. You're not able to see where they're going to play, how they're going to line up. We're going to be on a fact-finding mission like crazy between week 0 and the SMU game about where all these players are placed on the field. And that's another thing that I want to bring up regarding the defensive line, because one of the guys that's been shouted out a bunch, we're going to call this part of what's brewing tonight here on the Monday Smash. Daniel Lyons is being praised left and right. He had a really good moment today where he was asked about, why haven't you perhaps looked at other options considering the era we're in? You've been here a long time. And his response was simply, I'm a Nole. And that actually, in terms of engagement today on our Twitter feed, did pretty well. People were like, all right, somebody in this era just feels a little sense of identity with the actual jersey they put on and the helmet that they wear. Daniel Lyons has been shouted out a lot, Ira. And considering how Tony White has a multiple defense, I don't know how they're going to make all this work, getting all the pieces on the field at the same time. But I'm wondering now if Daniel Lyons is as good as they're saying, and you got to start believing Tony White a little bit because he told everybody that the Sears were coming, and I didn't believe him, and they were really good players. If you got Juju Wynn, who they're also talking up, and he's had so far a good offseason, and Daniel Lyons is being that leader, the Sears got shouted out today by Mike Norvell. I wonder if they might not have a 4-man front again this year, even though he's a 3-3-5 coach. I wonder if that's what's brewing. But Daniel Lyons for sure is somebody who has been singled out a lot across different coaches, across different interviews so far.
Yeah, and it's funny. Sometimes you hear things and you don't know what to make of it. And back in January, I was talking to somebody in the program about the retention and kind of how the transfer portal went. And the first person this person mentioned to me was, we were able to keep Daniel Lyons and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, what, really? Like, I didn't even, not that I didn't think it was important to keep Daniel Lyons, but the way the person said it, like it was very important to them to keep Daniel Lyons. And I think the reason why is, and Tony White talked about this, when you went back, Tony White admitted, he's like, during the season, when we're going through everything, I really didn't realize how well he was playing late in the year. But he really had come on late in the year. And then tour of duty is an area where apparently in the first 3 or 4 years that Daniel Lyons was at Florida State, tour of duty was one of those things. It's not built for defensive linemen. Like, we've been out there before. It's a lot better for the skill guys than it is for the linemen. And Daniel Lyons would struggle. And they said he would always, just generally be one of the least impressive performers in tour of duty. And they said it's been unbelievable to see him this year in tour of duty. So that, man, it's all really good stuff. Again, I don't know if he's as good as what was considered a really good Florida State defensive lineman. But if he's a 5th-year guy, he's been in the program, he's stayed, and he's playing at the best he's ever played. I mean, as a guy that's been in the rotation for a couple of years now, that's really positive. I do think the challenge here, and again, I feel like I keep qualifying things, but when I think it was after I talked on Jeff's show today, somebody texted me or called me and said that they thought I was, man, you were kind of talking guys up a little bit. And I'm like, this is all relative, right? This is all relative compared to at the end of last season, when we saw them lose at Stanford, when we saw them get humiliated by Florida in the second half, when we saw the way the transfer portal started out, like that, I'm looking at it from that perspective of, oh, this could be a complete disaster in 2026. They kept this coach, but they may not have a team around him to give him even a chance. The fact that I'm kind of encouraged by a lot of things I'm hearing and encouraged by some of the things we're seeing is based on that reality. It's not like we're sitting here saying that this is going to be a great team. It's just where I was at the end of last season and into January compared to where I am now. I do feel a lot better about things. And Daniel Lyons is another good example.
We're asking for morsels. I understand it. Like, yes. And this is like where the fan part of it comes in. I'm like, can we just get to a place watching this football program, if you're a Florida State fan out there, where it feels like the basketball program, where as you're changing the channel from whatever you're watching before to the game of the week, it's your Noles on the TV. You're saying, I can't wait to see what they do today. Or something along the lines of, this is what I take right now. God love them. They're not very good, but you know what? They got tons of heart. Like, just something. I know it's a morsel and it's beneath what we should be asking, but that's how I feel. And you're just looking for those signs of health. And there are little things cropping up here and there. If you want to level up your coffee game, well, you got to call the folks at the Copper Drip, everybody, because they've got a subscription service for you. Everywhere we serve you and the Warchant Multimedia Network, they can deliver. They can do it. You go to thecopperdrip.com for their small batch, ethically sourced, freshly roasted coffee delivered automatically to your door. You can do it once a month. You can do it every couple of weeks. You can always save up to 15%. We'll give you the code in a little bit. But Sierra and Brandon run an outstanding business based out of North Florida, right here in Tallahassee, where they're very involved with the community, which is fantastic. But they want to talk to you, Florida State fans, Warchant supporting folks out there just like yourself, either on the podcast or watching right here on Warchant TV. All you got to do is go to thecopperdrip.com, check out all those roasts, all those batches from different parts of the world. Ira, I know you've been converted. You're now on the coffee train. The iced coffee in the Schofel household is going strong. I love it for a couple of cocktails that I make over the weekend. However you enjoy it, thecopperdrip.com is the place to go.
Yeah, it has totally changed. I mean, Kim's always been a coffee drinker, and she still drinks the classic hot coffee. But yeah, I'm an iced coffee guy. And I was disappointed Saturday morning. Brandon and Sierra, they had their kiosk out at the market that they do downtown in Tallahassee on the weekends. Now that the weather's starting to get better, get a little bit warmer, they were out Saturday morning. I was really hoping to get there, but we had an event we had to go to down in Crawfordville, so we couldn't get there. But I am looking forward to going in the near future, when they're back out. And if you live in Tallahassee, check out, or the surrounding area, go to the Copper Drip on Instagram. A lot of times they'll put in there. They posted the other day that they were going to be out there at the market on Saturday, and go by and say hi. And Brandon's a huge FSU fan, so if you do get some coffee from them, and they'll at the kiosk, again, that's where the first time I met them, they've got all the different flavors, the syrups, all the different varieties. They can make an iced coffee for you out there as well. And talk about the Noles with Brandon, because he's a huge FSU fan. And again, the subscription service is something that we use as well and really enjoy at the house. Kim loves it. I love it. I think you'll love it too if you give them a try.
Use code MSMASH15 to save 15% off your order or that service. Outstanding, folks. Defensive line, linebackers. I want to get back to this. I see we have a question in the chat on the offense. We'll get to it in just a moment. You got two things competing here. How many good players do you have in each segment group? Let's get back to the morsels part of it, right? It's like, I think they feel pretty good about Chris Jones from Southern Miss. Somebody else is going to have to prove himself. I feel about maybe some of the linebackers the way you felt about the receivers a couple of years ago. For God's sake, it's been several years. I've got more hope, outside hope, for a rehabilitating Isaiah Williams than I do for some veterans in this linebacker rotation. If you can find 3 or 4, I think you can run a 3-3-5. If you only trust 2 or 3, and the defensive line has some more answers, Daniel Lyons playing well, and all these guys stay healthy. Juju Wynn's healthy for the start of the season. I know Deontay McCray was getting shouted out. Rylan Kennedy obviously being one of the lead transfers that comes in from the SEC. I just wonder, Ira, if configuration-wise, this might not look a little bit like it did last year, where they ran quite a bit of 2 linebacker sets, 4 defensive line sets. I wonder if we might not see a little bit of that again. That's one of the questions we can't know the answer to. We'll mine for that information, but they got to sort that out between now and the end of spring camp.
Yeah, from a number standpoint, that may be where they end up having to go. And maybe that's why they're going the way they're going in terms of I'm not saying go in terms of designing it that way, but the way the defensive line is kind of stepping up, and the way that is encouraged as they are, a lot of those guys seem to be getting opportunities. And I think that's exactly right. I mean, there's not a lot of depth in that linebacking core. You do have you bring in Chris Jones, he's the big attraction. You bring him in from Southern Miss. You also have Mekhi Bayer, who came in from North Carolina, that played for Tony White before. You return Omar Graham. You return Blake Nicholson. I don't know how excited people are going to be about those guys. Again, they've been in the program for 3 or 4 years, and if it hasn't happened yet, is it going to happen? But to your point, you do have an Isaiah Williams, who's a guy that they're really excited about, has a lot of talent. Caleb Lavalley, who transferred in last year but was never healthy. So they have a couple other options, and they like the young freshman. But, yeah, I don't know that you've got a lot of proven linebackers to where you can feel good about that 3-3-5. So putting all the kind of pieces together, I think you might be right. I think it may be more of a 4-2-5, which is what Florida State did previously. And they can do a lot of different things to make it multiple and look different ways. But from a personnel standpoint, I actually feel a little bit better about the overall depth on the defensive line. Not that there's a ton of top line talent, but just the overall across the board depth, guys that you could put out there and play, than I do at linebacker, because it's hard to believe that those guys who've been here for 4 years are going to make a big jump at this point.
You were talking about how just a short time ago, you weren't feeling so hot about 26 as everything was kind of collapsing last season. The retention was there. Brett, is he picking up what you're putting down correctly? Translation for Ira. Last January, I was thinking 2-10 again. Now I'm thinking that's at least off the table.
Well, for sure. And yeah, I mean, it's funny. Last year at this time, after we saw what they brought in from the portal, I thought this could be an 8-win team. If things go really well, it could be a 9-win team, maybe even crazy, a 10-win team. And if things go poorly, I could see it being a 6-win team, 6-7-win team. I didn't expect them to go 5-7. I thought that was way lower than I expected. And I thought if they did, that the head coach would be fired. I thought he'd be fired at 6-6. So they fell even lower than the expectations I had, which were not that high in the first place. This year, I would say because of the schedule and because of the overall, some of the concerns I have on the defensive line or maybe a linebacker, I would put the bar a little bit lower in terms of what my expectations are. I actually think this team against this schedule probably is not quite as strong as I thought last year's was. But to your point, there's no reason you can't overachieve. You underachieved last year. And if these guys really are bought in, and that might explain some of the things we talked about earlier, why they underachieved. Well, you maybe had some dudes who they weren't all bought in. They didn't have great character. They were not all unified. They were not all connected. Whereas if this time this team is, maybe you can accomplish a little bit more. So I guess what I'm saying is I think the talent level is close to what it was last year compared to the schedule. It's like, what do you have in terms of talent versus who you're going to be playing? I think it's similar, maybe a little bit less than where I felt last year, but last year fell way short of expectations. That's the thing. Like, this team has to at least meet what the expectations are, and you can't exceed them.
Without reliving the emotions of last year, I'll try very hard to do that. They were within touch in so many of those games that you saw that in a lot of ways they achieved what they were looking to do, to play the poker hand with the best, cards possible. So if it's a hand to hold them, if you're going to go all in, let's go all in. We're not going to get aces, but what do we got here? You had a pretty good hand and you found a way to lose the hand or mismanage your betting, however you want to put it. The coaching staff held back personnel-wise what they did last year. That was 7-8 wins was easily achievable, and yet they did not.
And think about the way certain guys played in certain situations that showed that lack of conviction. And we've talked a lot about the issues on defense, but think about offensively, man. Like, you had a couple plays, the end of the Stanford game, and I like Gavin Sawchuk just fine. I think it feels like to me, if the game's on the line, man, you have to put your body totally out there. You've got to get in that end zone. It's not late first quarter. If we don't get the touchdown, we kick a field goal. Like, this is the game. The whole game is on the line. You have to get in the end zone. And the way he ran it, and I'm not blaming him. I just think that's kind of where that team was. They just didn't have that conviction where, no, man, we're not going to be denied. Again, I'm not trying to compare them to Indiana, but you watch that run that Mendoza has where he's just pinballing around, putting his body on the line, that conviction, that belief, that desire. And that's what you want to see that. And so when you're losing close games and your guys don't have that desire, they don't have that determination, that's where, as a fan, you're like, man, this is not a fun team to root for.
Well, and you can still see that even in losses. And I know it's a farce that this is the discussion point, but if you're looking for improvement, you're also looking to not only improve in the win total, but you're also looking to improve in games that you don't win. How do you look? Because if you're trying to make this year about projecting what is possible for Mike Norvell moving forward, it's got to look a certain way. And if it doesn't, then the clarion call is only magnified for movement again this year. We'll see where they go. But these are the things that we're documenting right now at warchant.com about how are they going to try and build this thing. Can they put themselves in a position to pleasantly surprise everybody? That's what we got coming up this week. Now to the offense. Noel Kev, thank you very much for this question, the contribution. Thank you, sir. He says, T. Lang and the boss. What's up, guys? Question, who currently has more momentum? FSU with Norvell back at offensive coordinator and all they retained, or Florida with their new head coach? And by extension, that would mean new philosophies, installation, all that stuff. Thanks, guys, for all you do. You want to take this first? You want me to take this one? What you got?
I would say there's two different ways I'd look at that. One of them is momentum / vibes. And I think Florida's got the momentum there. Momentum in terms of recruiting and just the vibes and the recruiting, just all of that stuff. There's nothing you can do other than, unless you're coming off a national title or a conference championship, there's no time you have more momentum than is a first-year coaching staff. Like that is, you got the new car smell and people are excited, and people that, high school coaches that want to believe that Florida is going to be good are telling their players that Florida is going to be good because they've got a new coaching staff. And when things are going poorly, it's hard to ever reverse that. So that's kind of where you get to a point where, I think why they ultimately had to make a move is, they thought they had some momentum with the quarterback, DJ Lagway, after the 2024 season. When that bottomed out, well, man, they were sunk. Like there's no way to get that momentum back. Mike Norvell, he's not going to be able to get that momentum back in recruiting until they have a lot of success. I think they've done a good job of retaining some guys. To the question, bring some of the guys he was able to retain, Deuce Robinson, Mekhi Danzy, Usman Kromah, the twins on defense. Like they were able to retain enough key players and then bring in some guys who are fired up to be at Florida State. Like I think that all gives them a chance. But in terms of overall momentum, Mike Norvell's going to have to win a lot of games to get that back. Yep. You just can't get that back unless you actually start winning games. And look, man, you look at recruiting right now, they're just not in the mix for big time recruits anymore because of what's happened these last 2 years. And that's not going to turn around. But whereas Summerall hasn't done anything here, but he's got that new car smell. They're in it with a bunch of big recruits. They're getting commitments. They've got the buzz, and that carries you a little bit, and it gives you more time. But Norvell, he's not going to get real momentum, I don't think, until he starts winning games.
And I think Florida will have more momentum early in the season too, because they do ramp up their schedule. They know very well that they have a first-year head coach, and the way that they start is with Florida Atlantic and then Campbell, and then their first SEC game, it's a road test, but they're going to play Auburn. It's not like they have to open up with Georgia or Texas or something along those lines. So they've got a chance to make the splash. For Florida State, the key is if you want that momentum, any perceived momentum whatsoever, to move forward and in a good direction, that SMU game is critical, man. And Ira, you're not going to get them in a better spot. I mean, we've said this a bunch. We said it since the night that the schedule came out. You get a week 0 game, they don't. You play at home at night. It's their first game of the season. You'll have tuned up for it. The crowd will be engaged for that. This is your chance. If you want to have any shot at all for momentum on the trail, real momentum on the football field, you got to parlay that week 0 home game advantage against SMU and win that football game.
Yeah, 100%. And then you're going to have to back it up also. Again, like you had the big win against Alabama, then you didn't get a chance to really play another good team. So you played Virginia and you lost that game. And it was like, it just like popped the balloon. And so 100%, I agree with you 100% that the SMU game gives him a chance, like Mike Norvell and this coaching staff gives them a chance to kind of get back into it in terms of getting people back on their side. But you have to go play well against Alabama. And then you've got to, I'm not saying you have to win at Alabama, but you got to play well. You have to look like you know what you're doing. And then as you put the schedule up there on the board, like Central Arkansas, take care of them. You get Virginia at home. That has got to be a win. You can't be losing to Virginia at home like you lost to Pitt at home this past season. Friday night at Louisville is going to be a really difficult game. And then Miami is going to be a really difficult game. But there's a path there to get some excitement in the first half of the season, but he's going to have to prove it on a week-by-week basis. I was on Eric McLean and Kelly Gramlich from the ACC Network had me on their show, their podcast, a couple of weeks ago, and they asked me like what it's going to take for Mike Norvell to get the fan base really to believe back in him the way they did a couple of years ago. And I said, I think outside of winning a national title, it's going to take a good 2 or 3 years of consistent success for people to really buy in. Like if they just win 9 games this year, I don't believe the fan base is going to be like, okay, everything's fine now. Like when you've dug the hole that they've dug these last 2 years, it's going to take some sustained success. And, they put themselves in this situation. They're going to have to dig themselves out of it.
I'm all for that vigilance too. It's earned. You dug it yourself is the way you put it. It's amazing how quickly you can spend the equity of winning 13 games and getting snubbed out of the playoff and be totally in debt. I mean, we went to Vegas and we made a lot of bad decisions and now we've got no money. I don't know how we're getting back home. Like we had to cash the plane tickets. How can they do it? We'll find out. I did want to ask this, echo this question from Eric Angel. I'm a member, Eric. Thank you for being a member of the channel. Coach Storm, still the FSU strength and conditioning coach. Yeah, typically you hear from him at this point because they have tour of duty wrap up and or sometimes he'd be made available for the luncheon. I'm wondering if you've heard anything in regards to strength and conditioning right now. I'm not sure what you could report that would change the minds of the fans, but I'm just wondering if anything from the Coach Storm side of things have been whispered about or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they had their squat party last week. Apparently they had, a number of guys put up huge numbers in the squats in a couple of positions, maybe more than they have in the past. But yeah, I think everybody's keeping a low profile right now. I mean, the thing about a strength coach is a new strength coach, you talk about fresh, new car smell. Nothing has more new car smell than a new strength coach. You bring in a new strength coach, that's like, man, oh, we're going to push tires or we're going to do this. Like the other guy did that. We're going to do this. And people get so excited. And Storms had some of that early on. And then obviously they had success when, the team had success 2022 and 2023. But after these last couple of years, I mean, yeah, I think they're all laying low. As you said, we normally would get Josh Storms after tour of duty, or maybe we get him after the interviews we had on Friday. He was not available. And I don't think that's a sign of things haven't gone well. I think it's more a sign of we just don't need to. We don't need to add opportunities for people to lash out at our staff. And that's listen, they're not doing the spring tour. Mike Norvell's not going out in the spring tour this spring. I think it's a weird time because you want to get fans somewhat interested if you can, because you want them to buy tickets, you want them to come to games in the fall, you want to keep buying merch and everything else. But it's also difficult because they understand the reality of there's a lot of negative feelings about this coaching staff. And the only way to change that is to win games.
Yeah, they get it. You're right. They clearly get it with some of the decisions that they've made in terms of when to put people out there or when not to put people out there. Before we sign off for tonight, it's a really busy week for Florida State everywhere in terms of competition. The softball team has South Alabama on Wednesday this week. Then they host Syracuse this weekend. Florida State baseball is on the road all week in Gainesville tomorrow night. And then they head up to Wake Forest for the first ACC weekend series of the season. FSU football, of course, practices this week before taking a little hiatus for spring break. The full pads come on Friday. And then in between all that, old Luke Laux and the team that maybe will. Wow, what a fun couple of months it's been. Wednesday night, first game of the evening session of the ACC tournament. We're going to have coverage on site from Matt Lasser up there. It's Florida State and Cal tipping off at 7. If they win, they'll be playing in that same time window the next night against Duke. Ira, shots for this team as a send-off or promises of something great if they make the NCAA tournament by way of being an ACC tournament champion? Which path does Don Ira choose?
Real quick, and I just want to point out, I think Aslan's going to be in Gainesville Tuesday night to cover the FSU Florida baseball game, which will be nice. See if the Noles can get a win there. Yeah, man. Luke Laux, first ACC tournament. We got to do some shots.
I didn't expect that to be the answer. Here we go. There's
You don't
just
have
enough
to.
left in here, but
Okay.
but you lead the way. This is your deal, man. What is it? The same bottle? What are we breaking out tonight?
It is. This is we've done some damage to this bottle. If you go back to the start of this run for Luke Laux and this basketball team. We put a little dent in the Battle's End tequila.
That is outstanding.
That I'm sure you can get at thebattlesend.com, I'm guessing.
Yeah, you're going to be at the bottom of that spear if they win the ACC basketball tournament. I think we'll have to devise something fun when that happens. Let's manifest it, everybody. Good.
I told Matt's going up there to cover it. He'll be up there Wednesday and Thursday, and assuming they play Thursday, we'll see. And but he's got tickets to go see the players this weekend, so he's a little fired up about that, as you can imagine. So he's like, well, what am I going to do if they're still somehow they beat Duke? I was like, bro, Corey and I will be riding up to Charlotte. We'll take the weekend coverage. So I'll bring the bottle with me. If can we do it on the court? I don't know. If they won the ACC, we're doing shots on the court.
Absolutely, and
make them stop us.
Ask for forgiveness, not for permission, man. You could sneak that out there. Or you could dress up the bottle of something else. We can find a way. But all right, is there a toast or a send off because you've done some of these so perfectly and they've won and they've responded to you? What do you say to this basketball program?
No, man, they just got it's the coolest time as a coach. I gotta imagine is when you're playing as good as you could possibly play, which is, I believe, is what they've been playing for the last few games. And it's just, man, you just want to keep playing it. That you just can't wait to get it back out there again. And again, I'd recommend people go back and watch the end of Luke Laux' press conference on Saturday after they one another game, their fifth and whatever it was in a row. And the way he talked about how excited he is to coach this team in the ACC tournament, and how much he believes in what they can do. Man, if they could just kind of keep that going. I mean, I give them a chance. I mean, I think they've got that. They should beat Cal, and I think I give them a really good chance to at least give Duke something to think about. So we'll salute to that.
Cheers, everybody. Okay. All right. I think that's it, everybody.
It's coming to Charlotte with us.
All right. That is going to Charlotte. And I think we could create a Twitter account for it. It'd be like Ira's Tequila, at Ira's Tequila. And you could just document the journey. Here it is. It's got a seatbelt on in the car.
Yeah.
The seatbelt.
I'll take a picture with him and Bucky on the way on I-85 or 75, whatever it is.
Oh, that's perfect. All right. Well, cheers, everybody. We've got a lot of coverage coming up this week. If you haven't head over to the site to get caught up on all things football, the news is coming in fast. Tons of coverage head to toe. So head over to warchant.com. It's $1 for your first 5 days of experience. If you haven't joined us before, now is a busy time. As you could tell, it's already past 8 o'clock Eastern. And I mean, we could still talk about the baseball team for another 10 or 15 minutes, or we could talk more about the basketball team. Things are flying left and right. So head over to warchant.com for full coverage, outstanding coverage, and also the on-site coverage this week coming from Aslan in Gainesville, from Matt in Charlotte, and then from the guys out at practice and the interviews after practice for football. Anything else, Ira? Are you itching for one more thing, or are we signing off tonight?
I think you covered it all, buddy. You nailed it. Good work.
All right. Then if you're going to stick the landing, then don't argue with it. Good night, everybody. We'll talk to you next time right here on Warchant TV. Thanks to the Copper Drip and State Farm agent Russ Forrest for being outstanding sponsors.